when you mention having huge goals that are, likely unattainable, there's a human need to be successful, I think. And I felt this way often where I make my goal like, oh, I did that, so let's try doing twice as much. It's like, that's great, but you got to be careful that you don't end up feeling like you're failing all year because you're not on pace to get your goal. So what I recommend is to put in a win the day system where if you do, for me, it's like 20 contacts with people, set 2 appointments, go on 2 appointments. That's it. I just won that day and I feel good about it. And it resets some in my head are like, you're failing. I'm like, my second year, I was in the top 5% of agents and it just got better after that. I was like, doing better. That's really conceited, right? And selfish. Like I'm sitting here feeling like a failure while doing better than 95% of the agents in the country. What a tool, right? That's not what I would recommend. Figure yourself out. Like yourself. If you're the system, game the system, right? Figure out a way to stay positive and improve. And for me, it's just giving more. Like the more I give, the less likely it is that I'm gonna feel like a failure, right? So it's self-serving in a way, ultimately, kind of in a roundabout way. But yeah, you gotta stay up, right? You gotta look for meaning in what you do. And selling is not inherently all that meaningful unless you do it with heart and soul and connection and get people more than they could get from clicking on a house on eBay or whatever.
Well, that brings up 2 things. One was this really cool reflection on goal setting from a psychologist, like someone who studied neuroscience and psychology. And then the other one around defining success.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, I got this originally from sports, and it's like applying this to business. So the first one is if your goal is too big and your belief around achieving that goal is low, then you notice the obstacles and challenges along the way as problems that bring you down,
right,
and deter and make it harder for you to achieve that goal,
right,
because you're so far away already. And when we are in momentum and feeling positive and optimistic and confident, it's because we feel like we're close.
right.
If it's too easy, right? If I say, I made this money last year. What's your goal? I want to make the same. That's not very motivating. And so you can't have it something be too easy, right? If I'm a tennis player and I'm like, I want to win this match, and my wife laughed. She was like, she won her group in tennis. So she was in 3.0. She was in 3.0. She won hers in this tournament. I was in 4.5. I lost in the semis. And I'm sitting there angry. And she's like, well, I'm not overly that happy because the quality of the players wasn't that good. Like, it wasn't that great of an achievement to win 3.0. I should have entered 3.5, and I may not have won, but then I might have had like better matches. And so same thing with business. Like, you can't be dead easy, but you can't be super hard. And so psychologists said to tell people, so if you're thinking about goal setting, ask yourself this question. I do this with my team all the time. I say, look, write down all your goals. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being I'm absolutely certain because this is dead easy. 1 being there's no chance in hell I'm achieving this.
Right? Yeah.
Where are you? Where are you out of 10? And the sweet spot for goals is in that 6, 7, 8 range. Really 7, 8, because 6 kind of starts to get a little bit too. Because if it's 9 or 10, it's kind of dead easy. It may not be that motivating. If it's like below a 6, a 5, 4, 3 less, you're like, man, this is daunting, and I feel down every day that I'm not close. And so with goal setting, I'm always thinking about being at sweet spot of a 7 and 8, because let's say you made 50 grand and you want to make 100 grand, but you're like, I don't know. Like, that's maybe like a 5, but you're like, okay, I'm gonna make 75 grand. And you're like, okay, that one, I feel like an 8.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, So then you go out about your year, and then all of a sudden you make 80, and you're like, sweet, I reached my goal.
Right.
Well, the next year, the 100 grand is no longer a 5 out of 10. You're like, I want to make 100 grand. Well, that feels like an 8 now that I made 80.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden in 2 years, you actually make the goal that you did want. But you took steps to get there, because if you then stuck to 100, and you might have felt bad. And if you feel bad, then you're not doing the activities, you're not speaking the right way, and then you don't actually even make the 80 because you're feeling bad.
It becomes your expectation, because that's your experience, that you get what you set out to get. So it's self-enhancing. Right.
So yeah, so be in that sweet spot. And then the other one, which you talked about, which on a daily basis, is you have your goal, your outcome goal, that is your quarterly or annual goal, and that should be an outcome, because like we need to achieve outcomes. But then on a day-to-day basis, what are things that I'm in control over? 'Cause you're not totally in control over how much money you make.
No.
But you're in control over how many calls you make. You're in control over your attitude. You're in control over all your activities.
Right.
And if you define success on your process, on achieving your process, then you feel like a winner on a daily basis.
Right.
Business really is a process and a mathematical equation of, you do these inputs, you're likely going to get these outputs.
Most people don't do that exercise, though. I have the best business plan I've ever seen is based on some formulas that calculate themselves. You put in how much you want to make, and at the end of it, you know exactly how many calls based on your personal history you need to make that year, that day. You know how many one-on-one connections, how much marketing you need to do. It's just very clear. And the most puzzling thing, one of the most puzzling things in real estate from coaching many agents, is it's like a complete mystery to them why they're not more successful. It's like, well, if you need to make 10 calls a day to set the number of appointments that you can typically set, and you're making 2 calls a day, why is that a mystery?